Out here in the Desert National Wildlife Refuge, biggest in the United States, united portion of the states, lower 48 as they say. Beautiful, cool, late April day, before the heat really comes on. Might get some rain today. I don't have rain gear, so for once I'm hoping it's not heavy in the desert. It's easy to forget to start bringing your rain gear again when it never rains. Then suddenly you're on a trip and you don't have it. Quite a yucca forest here. Especially the Joshua tree component. Yucca shadidra doing quite well here too though. These barren desert pavements. Spring Mountains heights out there. Maybe getting pummeled right now. Can't see Charleston for the cloud. Spring remains pretty desolate here. Obviously, no annual growth still. And this late in the season, it's fairly safe to say it'll never come this year. Unless there happen to be a massive precipitation event, I suppose. Which doesn't seem likely. Looks like a lot of taxa are actually losing their leaves already. Anticipation for the summer rather than gaining many new ones. Although there are exceptions, of course. So crazy to see all these things going dormant in middle of spring already. It's too much pressure from the elements, from the herbivores. They don't want to produce leaves just for things to eat them right away, and for them to have a net loss rather than gain enough to flower. I do expect some differences in the washes, as we tended to see at the Lake Mead. But these interwash spaces, it's going to be a long dormant year. And the signs are all here that it's time to go higher in latitude and altitude. Seeing something quite disturbing. A lot of Joshua trees are just laying exposed like this, having shed or been shed from the outer protective covering of fibrous leaf bases, and they're dying as a consequence. This one's okay, but a lot of them are dying off. I've never seen this before. Gotta wonder if it's the sheep first, then other factors, because there's a lot of them, especially the bigger ones. And we all know they can get a lot taller than this. Big one there dying. Got one here. You can see the leaves browning off quite quickly there. Not necessarily the majority of them, but maybe the majority of big ones, because there's another big one starting to fall over. Some death right there. And wait for it, the worst looking one of all is straight ahead. The loss of the fibrous leaf bases leads to pretty imminent death. These are all looking pretty newly exposed and newly dying at once. Gotta wonder if it's disease, because geez, it is widespread. All those bigger ones. Again, I'm a bit shocked out here because I've never seen this before. Might try to take a closer look at some of them, because this seems quite serious, although I'm sure it's known by land managers and ecologists and such. But systematic botanists like me, I don't have any immediate insight into what's going on here. It's been eaten, to be certain. Those leaves, that is. Yes, someone's eating them, but are they scraping away protective covering too for some reason? I don't know. Gotta check for teeth marks, perhaps. Not immediately evident. Feels like a humid wind. You can see those exposed bright tan portions of the Joshua tree from far away. And it's something ridiculous. It's something like perhaps up to half of individuals are affected this way, especially the larger ones. And it's quite unsettling, because this looked like a beautiful, mature Joshua tree forest from afar, but it's could be described as perhaps a little too mature, because they're dying of something. Whether it's a disease of the older individuals or herbivory. It's really not looking good for this forest. Not happening to Eucalyptus. But they're a lot less branching, and they have a lot less exposed quote-unquote bark. It's not really bark, because monocots can't produce bark. Whew, but it's so high up too. How would anything get that high up? It does look like a big bite right there. But no one wants to eat that part. There's nothing nutritious about the dead fiber stuff at all. And it's too high up for bighorns, I think. Well, we all know they're good climbers. Perplexed in a highly disturbed manner, because that's the result. Some of the younger ones are maintaining, which makes me think it may be a disease of the old. Cactus. That's what those look like, dead, huh? It's always kind of rattling to see death in this place where not much is living to begin with. Because this is an abnormal amount of death. Another possibility I don't really want to think of is that it's a drought-induced death. Pretty low in elevation here. Maybe this is the future. These lower and hotter parts are going to start disappearing. I don't know. It's way too widespread to just be a coincidence. Getting to the point where I don't want to look at them anymore because they all are starting to look like this. Worst part is the fate is sealed once the first crack appears, because this thing ain't coming back. It's not going to suddenly gain protection again there. It's going to lose protection as such. And the signs of death are not long behind on this one. See, that looks quite disturbed by animals, but a lot of the other ones don't. So I think we could have multiple things going on here. I think there could be, number one, weakness from drought, and that in turn, especially in such a dense population, has maybe led to the spread of a disease. Also, when they're weakened, any herbivory may be likely to cause fatal damage too. There could be multiple things going on, but what's clear as the Mojave skies usually are is that there's an epidemic of death here. It's insidious too, because they can look mostly healthy and then you get around to one side and see the signs of death beginning. Look at this one here, I'm almost afraid to look. And then you might convince yourself it's beginning right there. That one's in a wash, so it should have more water. So that's not a good sign. And even these big healthy ones looks okay, but the cracks of death are there. See that? This thing ain't gonna be living much longer. At the same time, selection could be at work, and only the fitter, younger individuals are forming the next generation, maybe more resistant to whatever's going on. Or maybe this one's condemned too. We really are near the lower edge of their elevational range here. Be below 3,000 feet really soon, I think. Basically on the edge of the Las Vegas Valley. Cliffs are more interesting. Got some Euichnidiourens and Prunus fasciculata, and an old encampment. That's one big rock nettle, isn't it? I'm sure it's a decent, shelter. It's not far from Las Vegas. And it's well protected and north facing from, the worst of the heats. Probably pretty cold in winter, but not exactly below freezing. Not much storm happening except for this one cloud that won't really move at all from higher springs. It's been sitting there stationary all day. I'm getting closer to the meadows. There they are. Definitely spring down there in the meadows, all that dark green stuff. Ornamental trees. I'm walking right up to the edge of the metropolis. Here I am, just a few hundred feet lower. No more Joshua trees, only Yucca shedidra. And most of them are looking quite fine. Even that one is sprouting new shoots from the base. I'm seeing some actually truly massive ones even as they begin to peter out, because maybe getting a little too low for them now soon too. It's less shrubby below. Maybe more of a Laria monoculture, we'll see. Almost at the edge, a few more miles. Things I'm seeing regularly flowering are the kind of serious. Bahiopsis, Sorothamnus, and probably most common of all, perhaps oddly enough, is beaver tail cacti. A lot of them are pretty in pink right now. Sometimes the Larias are flowering, sometimes not. Can never understand them flowering wise. Seem to be able to do it all year, but sometimes in the spring they're not doing things at all. Very strange to me. Desert National Wildlife Refuge is a fantastic swath of wilderness. Here's just a small piece of it, right adjacent to the big city. I don't know how much all those people appreciate that fact. They're not surrounded by more and more suburbs and farmlands as most metro areas on Earth, but rather lots of nature and wilderness. Rain's picking up elsewhere. It's even drizzling a little bit on me now, but not enough to get anything wet, of course. Could still happen though. It is looking cloudier and wetter out in the valley proper too. View of the skyline is diminishing. Springs continue to be covered. Now the sheeps are getting some precip. It's technically raining, but not much seems to be getting wet. Basically seems to be evaporating as soon as it falls. I'm not getting wet. And therefore, I doubt the plants are getting much, but you never know. They're well adapted to make the most of the least. It's not really soaking in, at least not yet, but maybe the roots spread enough and close to the surface enough that maybe some of it's helping. If it gets heavier, there won't be any question, because it's looking rather tenebrous out there. I wouldn't mind seeing a good soaking across this landscape. It's a pretty low range getting hammered right now, below 5,000 feet. I believe that's called Fossil Ridge. The higher sheeps look cloaked in. So good stuff. It's always good to see moisture out here. Just run into a dune system. Don't know if it's naturally more barren or if it's because of all these old tire tracks. People surely still come out here even though it's a protected area now. Raining again, but still not exactly soaking in. Still seeming to disappear as soon as it falls. It's basically sunny every time it rains. Not getting wet at all, it's just hitting the surface and disappearing. It's best when the rain falls just hard enough to make the shrubs drip, and that dripping action helps soak the ground. But it's just light enough that none of that seems to be happening. It's even sunny out that part of the valley. That's quite pretty. Seed datura already in April. Some of the biggest flowers around these parts. And I haven't seen any mature yet this year, so this is quite a nice site for it. It must be tapped into some nice moisture underground. Been seeing them starting out on the roadsides near home, and that's about it. But here this is thriving. Several days prior to the end of April. It's exceptional. No more yucca anything down here. Closer to 2,500 feet now. This is what the natural vegetation of the Las Vegas Valley would have looked like. Lots of Ambrosia dumosa, Laria tridentata, typical low Mojave Valley floristic composition. Of course, different and more diverse things in the washes. Some extraordinarily large halo ketone here, forming large succulent mats. This barren, disturbed area. They're still building stuff on the edge of Tule Springs. Sometimes you wonder if it's not a body. It's a little trepidation inducing sometimes, especially since I'm less than a mile from a paved road in the metro area. Nonetheless, following this long broad wash in Tule Springs National Monument. Tule Springs Fossil Beds, I believe, is the full name. Seeing kids. There's a lot of trash, so not the nicest national park. It's probably almost 50 feet wide in this wash, and it's big and unvegetated. The wash is large, unvegetated, except for some big bright bushes and occasional birds. We've got a wonderful mesquite habitat right here. Lots of birds living in there. This place is lined with saltbush. Very distinguishing feature of this particular wash. I haven't seen saltbush lining the washes like this today at all yet. Of course, datura. This sporadic big nicotianas and dahlias as well. Largely unvegetated, probably gets a nice scouring once in a while. Ground's a little wetter this morning. Still not really wet enough to do much. At least I think the plants can use some of it this time. Those bare compacted sands at least look a little wet now, huh? They've been drying for about 15 minutes now. Anyway, still following the wash. Quite a bit of bebia appearing. That's the Las Vegas Paiute Indian Reservation, I believe it's called, with its associated very green golf courses. Ground is so dry that it remains highly resistant to water absorption. To be a lot heavier to start changing things. Gravels are looking a little wet though. These green shoots, Eriogonum and such, are starting to get a little wet too. Quite interesting to see Flugia paradoxa Apache plume below 3,000 feet in a deep Mojave wash. Definitely well exceeds 100 degrees here most days in the summer. And for something I consider more temperate, it is very interesting indeed to see it here. Here's Salazaria mexicana. Charismatic mint shrub when it's doing stuff, resulting in these bladdery like calyces that enclose the fruits, the nutlets. So those are not the fruits, but appear to be. Most of the year looks pretty barren and bare and unidentifiable.